have a BMW M5 with something called the competition package. It's intended for those who desire a bit more in the way of limit performance from their 5-seat rear-drive super sedan. But for the $7,300 it costs, it doesn't provide any single significant change. What you get instead are many small adjustments that total into something greater. There's 15 more horsepower at the top end and the torque peak lasts a bit longer. There are stiffer springs, dampers, and roll bars that lead to a 0.4-inch lower ride height. The bushings are new, and the stability control differential and steering have been recalibrated. This week on Ignition, we find out how well this works. The newfound power doesn't translate into faster acceleration, as this M5 matched the European spec car we tested last year. The frustratingly complex launch control procedure remains too. Still, this kind of acceleration from a 4,400-pound sedan is impressive. 60-0 braking improved slightly, and the carbon ceramic discs didn't exhibit fade. The competition package showed the most improvement on the Figure 8, cutting a significant amount of time off the previous M5s we've tested. Its lap time even edged out that of the lighter M6, although that car generated a higher average lateral G. So the M5 competition, and really after testing it the way we have, I've come to the conclusion that this is how the M5 should have been out of the gate. Power aside, we have more power, we have torque for longer in the RPM range too. And it's faster, and that's great. But the handling balance has been improved. I wasn't disappointed so much with the standard M5, I just kind of took it as what it was, a heavy sedan with a lot of power. And that's still what this car is, but it also has more control. The stiffer suspension, the stiffer springs, damping rates, roll bars, bushings, the improved steering. It transforms this car into something that's a lot more communicative, a lot more controllable. It doesn't hide the weight. That's something that we're never going to be able to get around. This is a very heavy rear drive big sedan, and it drives like one. But knowing that, when you treat the car with respect, you can actually have quite a bit of fun with it in limit handling situations like we're in now. There is a fair amount of mid-corner understeer, which isn't that fun in the slower corners, but in the faster corners, it is beneficial. And the power this thing makes, the low-end torque and how quickly this thing generates torque makes this car a lot of fun on corner exit. The nice thing is that this is a turbocharged V8, but you don't get a big sense of turbo lag. You don't feel like you're waiting once you get into the throttle for the boost to come in, for the power to get delivered. It feels like a very strong, naturally aspirated engine, though it doesn't sound like one. It still doesn't sound that great. The exhaust note just is kind of flat. And yeah, sure, it's fake. It's being pumped in through the stereo. But I kind of wish it sounded more like a natural V8. It had the natural qualities of that V8 sound. It's missing that, which is a bummer. But getting back to the handling balance, around the Figure 8, this car was actually kind of frustrating because of the mid-corner understeer. And that's a handling situation where your mid-corner speeds are about 40 miles an hour, maybe 50 miles an hour or so. When you start going faster though, I actually kind of appreciate that understeer because it keeps the car stable at, 100 mile an hour sweepers, which is nice. And because you have so much power on tap and such an aggressive differential, you can get out of corners really fast. In fact, versus the last M6 I drove, which is the most frequent, M car of this type, the thing that I noticed the most after driving this car hard is how much better it's able to get out of corners, that traction coming out. The M5 and M6, from what I remember, had big problems applying all that power to the rear tires. And also they were pretty aggressive on turning too. You could get yourself in trouble entering a corner too hot. This car feels more stable and precise than those cars did. And it's a lot more fun because of it. And from driving this car on the road at, normal speeds, the ride doesn't feel worsened in any significant way. It feels like what you'd expect from a performance sedan. It's big, there may be a few more bumps and whatnot, but it's not harsh. It's rather nice. I do have to give BMW kudos for this powertrain. How quickly it delivers torque, how quickly the transmission responds to shifts, how aggressive you can be on downshifts. It's very, very nice. Maybe the best part of this car is the drivetrain. I think for it to become a really good driver's car, more so than a good driving fast sedan, it's going to need to be a bit lighter, and that's unfortunately something that we're not going to be able to change. But as is, I definitely respect this car for what it is. A fast, really heavy, and decently fun to drive sedan at the limit. I do think the competition pack should be standard though. I think this is the way the car should drive from the get-go. Though it may sound obvious, the competition package makes for a better handling and faster M5 without any significant decrease in ride quality. It looks better too, thanks to the slight drop in ride height, and sounds better due to the changes in the exhaust system. And while it's not a sharp handling tool, the M5 as equipped becomes a much better driving car. One whose combination of performance and usability is very easy to admire. It makes you wonder why the car wasn't like this from the beginning. You can't do this in the E63. I mean, so like, F that. And why would you want an E63? You can't do that in E63.
Okay, comment on that really.
That was one-handed and everything. See, so why would you want an E63? You can't do that. Unless you live in the snow belt. In that case,
or unless you live in Europe.
Good for you.
Yeah.
They get the rear drive. And not in the UK though. I think the UK it's all all-wheel drive. Anyway, so is that good?